Welcome to Midnight Ghost Stories. This is where chilling tales are brought to life through an emotional narration, taking you into a world full of mystery and fright. From urban legends to real ghost stories, each video is a journey to uncover the secrets of the darkness. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and join us as we step into a world where fear becomes reality. Are you ready? In many cultures, black cats are often seen as harbingers of misfortune and uncertainty. Maybe that's why, when I suggested adopting a black cat with sleek, jet black fur, my husband strongly opposed it. Even my daughter, who loves animals, seemed hesitant when she saw this cat. That was strange because usually, she enjoyed playing with any creature she met. As time passed, people around the neighborhood started buzzing about mysterious disappearances of pets in the area. Some said that there might be a predator lurking nearby and advised me to be careful. Despite my neighbors' warnings, I decided to keep the black cat, secretly caring for it in the backyard as a private joy known only to me. Growing up, my parents never allowed me to keep pets, which only fueled my fascination with small animals. But strangely, within a few days, I began to feel that something was eerie about this black cat. It would puff up its fur and hiss angrily whenever I came close. Its sharp eyes seemed to pierce through me, looking as if it wanted to attack. A vague, indescribable fear began to well up inside me. Rumors of bad omens suddenly flooded my mind, leaving me uneasy. One stormy night, as everyone else was fast asleep, I suddenly heard the black cat wailing mournfully from the back of the house. Oddly enough, it seemed that I was the only one who heard it. My husband and daughter didn't seem to notice. The cries mixed with the thunder outside, stretching the night into an endless, haunting experience. The next morning, my daughter's scream shattered the quietness. My husband and I rushed over, horrified by the sight before us. The black cat lay motionless on the damp ground, its dark blood dry and thick. But the most shocking thing was that its head was gone, leaving only a bare, lifeless body. Both my husband and daughter stared at me, their eyes filled with fear as if I were some kind of monster. I looked down at my dress. It was stained with smeared patches of blood, remnants of a nightmarish evening. In that instant, a chilling realization dawned on me. The thrill of tormenting small creatures had crept back into my soul, without me even noticing. When I was young, my family still used an old-fashioned landline phone, and one night, the sudden ringing of the phone shattered the quiet of the night. It was an anonymous call. The caller had an eerie voice, whispering in a way that made it unclear if they were male or female, and they spoke chilling threats. The voice spoke predictions of death, not deaths that had happened, but those yet to come. They knew our exact location and claimed they would kill each one of us, skinning us alive, one by one. My father, irritated, assumed it was a cruel prank and hung up, but it didn't end there. The next night, the phone rang again right at midnight. It was the same sinister voice, but even more terrifying this time. The caller described the exact clothes each member of the family was wearing. Things became serious because it was clear someone was watching us. Disturbed, my parents went to the police the next morning. The police agreed to trace the call if the person called again. That night, the phone rang once more. The police traced the call, but the result left us chilled. The call was coming from inside our own home. Hearing this, I felt a ghostly presence around me. Looking closer, I noticed a long, thin black hair beside the phone, but we didn't own any pets. I walked over to the window, startled to see a black cat sitting quietly on the windowsill, its eyes fixed on our family. People say that black cats are connected to the supernatural, carrying the mysteries of the night. Was that hair from this cat? Though the police said it wasn't a serious case, the strange calls continued every night. Along with them, black cats began appearing outside our window, sitting silently, watching us with eyes that seemed to know something. The whispers from the phone echoed through the night, each word hissing in my ear. Skin, skin, skin alive. Unable to bear it any longer, my family decided to disconnect the phone line each night to avoid the disturbances. But even with the phone unplugged, it kept ringing, as if from a realm beyond human understanding. We couldn't understand why we were the target of such a strange phenomenon until one day, I remembered. My mother had bought a sleek black fur coat. The coat was as black as a cat's fur, made of dozens of soft, dark hairs stitched together. Not long after, a real tragedy struck. Our house caught fire. My parents perished in that terrible blaze. They say burning is one of the most painful ways to die, as flesh melts away slowly. That burning sensation must feel just like being skinned alive. Many years have passed, but the horrifying memory of that year still haunts me. In the dark of night, when I walk alone, I sometimes hear the faint meow of a cat somewhere nearby. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy cat passing by. It wears an unsettlingly smooth layer, not of fur, but something that looks like human skin. Long ago, the people of my village told stories about a mysterious type of crow called the demon crow, believed to be a harbinger of death. They symbolized evil forces, tied to fear and mysterious losses. But no one expected that one day, disaster would strike our small village. Young girls began disappearing, one after another, without a trace. It all started when the daughter of a widowed woman in the village disappeared into the deep forest while picking mushrooms. We searched everywhere but found no clues. Just then, a famous shaman in the village stepped forward and declared it was the demon crows who had taken the girl, because they were the servants of an evil god, hunting young girls to be sacrificed to that god. To stop the demon crows from causing more havoc, he advised the villagers to hunt them every night in the forest. But before setting off, everyone had to drink a special herbal potion, which he said would allow them to see the demon crows in the dark. The villagers, fearing that disaster would befall their families, followed his advice without question. From then on, the sound of hunters echoed through the pitch-black forest every night. However, despite the relentless hunting, the girls continued to disappear in strange and terrifying ways. What made us even more anxious was that whenever a crow was killed, a girl would disappear. The villagers began to believe that the crows were seeking vengeance, that their blood demanded a life in return. But no one dared to stop the hunting. They feared that if they did, the entire village would face terrible consequences. In my confusion over what was true and what was false, I decided to stop drinking the herbal potion. One night, as I sat in the dark, I saw a crow. Its eyes were murky like fog, standing silently next to a bowl, the very bowl of herbal potion that the shaman had asked us to drink every night. In that moment, I realized the horrifying truth. The crows we had been hunting were actually the missing girls from the village. The herbal potion was just a drug that put the villagers into an illusion, making them see people as demon crows instead of recognizing them as the girls they once were. When I revealed this truth, everyone was stunned. Finally, the veil of mystery was lifted. We all realized that the shaman had been deceiving us to serve his evil purposes. He needed young girls to perform a dark spell called the Heaven Spirit Charm. He had created the story of the demon crows to cover up his cruel actions, using the villagers as tools for his sinister plan. But he could not escape the consequences. One night, as darkness fell, hundreds of crows surrounded the shaman's house. Their cries echoed eerily in the night, surrounding the house like a nightmare. The next morning, the house was nothing but rubble, with no trace of the shaman, not even a single strand of hair. But the bloodstains were everywhere, haunting and chilling, leaving us all terrified. Since that day, I have never understood why I saw that crow with its strange, cloudy eyes. It seemed to embody an invisible connection, a sign of awakening amidst a crowd of deluded people. Perhaps it was the demon crow from the legend, not to spread fear, but to awaken those lost in the darkness. In a world full of strange and terrifying things, a half-human, half-pig species known as pig people still exists. They have human bodies, but the head of a pig, a form considered to be a cruel curse of nature. The chances of two ordinary people giving birth to a pig person are very rare, but if an ordinary person marries a pig person, their children will certainly inherit that same form. Living in the midst of rejection and prejudice, these pig people often group together, avoiding the judging eyes of society. They are victims of violence and discrimination, with many being captured for experimentation, tortured physically and mentally, or sold as goods in the black market. Among these tragedies, the most famous is the story of a pig child who was kidnapped and brutally killed by a group of fanatics. They believed that pig people came from hell, bringing with them bad omens and misfortune for humanity. It was believed that pig people would forever remain at the bottom of society, living in the shadows of rejection. But then an unexpected disaster occurred that changed everything forever. A strange virus broke out, spreading rapidly and causing mass deaths. Humanity faced the threat of extinction, helpless against the vicious plague. In a moment of desperation, a brilliant female scientist made an astonishing discovery. The pig people were completely immune to this virus. Furthermore, she believed that anyone who came into close contact and formed a bond with a pig person would gradually develop immunity. This meant that the parents or spouses of pig people would also be safe from the virus. This discovery swept through society like a storm. Those who had once been despised became the most sought-after individuals. The rich, powerful, and beautiful race to marry pig people to protect themselves and their families from the plague. The number of pig children grew, and the desire to connect with pig people seemed to turn society upside down. The once dominant class now had to bow down to the pig people, hoping to find salvation. Over time, human-shaped beings were gradually replaced. After hundreds of years, ordinary humans had finally become extinct. The world was now entirely populated by pig people, the only remaining species on Earth. On the day that marked the anniversary of this existence, a grand ceremony was held to honor the person who had contributed the most to the survival of humanity, the female professor who had discovered the immunity mechanism. But few knew that her greatest achievement was not finding a way to stop the plague, but rather that she had actually created it. It turned out that the evil virus was just a tool in her brutal revenge against the society that had mercilessly taken her young son, calling him a demon. But she wanted to prove that her son was not a demon, but the embodiment of a god, bearing the power to save the entire world. The story of the virgin ghost in Korea, Chinyogwishin. Around the world, the story of the virgin ghost is a popular horror tale, but in Korea, they call the spirit Chinyogwishin. According to traditional beliefs, Korean women are raised from birth to fulfill 3 important duties: serving their parents, husbands, and children. If a woman dies before she is married and before fulfilling these responsibilities, it is believed that her spirit will not be able to rest in peace. These ghosts are said to wander everywhere, seeking out young men or women of similar age to haunt. The appearance of Chinyogwishin is described as haunting. A woman dressed in a white hanbok, with long hair falling over her face, pale skin, and deep eyes with dark circles. Their lips are sometimes bright red, creating an eerie, mournful look. What's frightening is that at first glance, they appear as ordinary people with a neat and graceful appearance. These spirits are often encountered in abandoned buildings, old hospitals, or schools at night, places that are empty and gloomy. One of the famous stories about Chinyogwishin tells of a young man who lived on the top floor of an old apartment building. At that time, elevators were not common, and apartments on higher floors were usually cheaper due to the inconvenience. One night, while deep in sleep, the young man suddenly heard a knock on the door. The knocks were steady and echoed through the quiet night. He opened his eyes, listened for a while, but when he went to check, there was no one outside. When he returned to his bed, he heard a cold voice whisper in his ear, "Close your eyes. Count to 100. Do not make a sound." Although a little frightened, his curiosity overtook him. He closed his eyes and began to count. The numbers echoed in his head like a steady rhythm. 1, 2, 3. However, by the time he reached 49, his curiosity became unbearable. He opened one eye to look, and immediately, his body froze. At the foot of the bed, a woman was squatting. Her white hanbok stood out in the dim light. Her long hair covered her face, but through the messy strands, her empty eyes stared directly at him. Unblinking and unmoving, her gaze seemed to pierce through his body, drawing in each breath. He wanted to scream, but his throat was tight. His body was paralyzed, only the sound of his frantic heartbeat echoing in his chest. There are many versions of how this story ends, but none offer an escape for the young man. Some say that after that night, he went insane, living the rest of his life in constant fear, often whispering the numbers over and over. Others claim that the next morning, he was found dead, his face twisted in fear, his eyes wide open as if still seeing the ghost. No matter how the story ends, it remains a chilling warning. Some things are better left uncurious. Sometimes, just a glance is enough to open the door to hell. Emma, a 19-year-old girl, was a first-year student at a prestigious university in New York. It was a late fall evening, cold and biting, and Emma had to stay later than usual at the library to finish an important essay. When the last pages were closed, the clock showed almost midnight. Tightening her scarf around her neck, Emma left the library and walked back to the old apartment building where she lived alone on the 14th floor. The street was eerily quiet, with only the sound of her footsteps echoing in the night. The yellow light from the street lamps stretched her shadow across the ground in strange, distorted shapes. When she entered the lobby of the building, Emma couldn't hide her unease. She pressed the elevator button and glanced around, feeling like someone was watching her, but there was no one to be seen. The elevator doors opened with a sharp ding. Emma stepped in and quickly pressed the 14th floor button. But just before the doors could close, a voice called out from behind. "Wait!" A young man stepped in, looking only a few years older than Emma. He was tall, handsome, with a warm smile. Emma's anxiety eased a little. "You live on the 14th floor?" he asked, his gaze friendly. Emma nodded quietly, murmuring, "Yes. Funny, I live on the 13th, he added, smiling gently. Emma felt a bit confused. The silence that followed made her start daydreaming. She secretly glanced at the young man out of the corner of her eye and thought to herself, "If he became my boyfriend, that would be wonderful." The elevator stopped on the 13th floor. The young man stepped out, turned back to Emma and said, "See you again." But as the elevator doors were about to close, he suddenly turned back, pulling a sharp knife from inside his coat. With a twisted smile, he whispered, "See you up there." The doors slammed shut, and the elevator continued upward. Emma was frozen in shock. For a moment, she heard frantic footsteps echoing from the stairwell next to her. It was running. The man was running up to the 14th floor. His insane laughter echoed down the hall, growing closer. Emma desperately pressed every button in the elevator, hoping it would stop on any floor. But nothing happened. The elevator kept moving, unrelenting, like a cage trapping her in total fear. 12th floor, 13th floor. Emma's heart was racing. She knew he was waiting for her on the 14th floor. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors slowly opened. He was standing there, right in front of Emma. The knife in his hand gleamed with cold steel. His face twisted into a predatory grin. Emma didn't have time to scream. The next day, the body of the young girl was found in the elevator. She had multiple fatal knife wounds, deep enough to show the brutal, inhumane frenzy of the killer. No newspapers reported it, and no one knew the identity of the murderer. But the residents living in the area believed the horrifying story was real. The haunting never stopped. It is said that the most terrifying thing was not Emma's death, but the sheer terror she experienced as the elevator moved from the 13th floor to the 14th. After the incident, many buildings in the US added emergency stop buttons to their elevators, as a quiet reminder of this chilling story. But for those who have heard the tale, every time they step into an elevator, they can't help but shudder at the thought of their fateful encounter with the killer of the 13th floor. This is the story that caused a stir on social media about 1 to 2 months ago, about a strange woman dancing on quiet roads at night in rural America. Along with it came a warning. If you happen to encounter this woman, it's best to run as far as you can because it could be very dangerous. Although this is not a new story, the haunting image of this woman has existed for a few years and was recently reposted on social media platforms. The first video of this woman, filmed in 2019, shows her dancing in the empty streets of a small town in Missouri. The video quickly gained attention, featuring an image of a woman standing silently in the middle of the night, swaying and dancing in a strange way, as if the world around her didn't exist. According to some people, if she notices you, she will immediately chase after you with a shining knife in hand. Some rumors even claim that she targets children or pregnant women. However, others believe she could attack anyone. If you're driving on empty roads at night, you might see her from a distance, swaying and dancing in the dim light of street lamps. Of course, never try to approach her, because if you do, you won't have enough time to escape. Others believe this woman might hide in a thick bush by the side of the road and suddenly jump out in front of passersby or vehicles. If you encounter such a situation, it's important not to turn and run, but to stay still in your car or stand still in place. Wait until she finishes her dance, and then she will leave without harming you. Never make any noise during this time, as it could anger her and put you in danger. There is very little verified information about this woman, and her mystery only makes her more eerie and frightening. Some people believe it's just a rumor because there's no proof of her existence. However, after the videos on TikTok and YouTube spread widely, the question arose, could this be a joke or just an urban legend? This woman seems to only appear in small towns in America, but many people are worried that if these clips continue to be shared, she could show up anywhere, even in your own city. In Springfield, Kentucky, there is a bridge crossing Shadow Creek, which has become the focus of many mysterious stories that locals always whisper about. This bridge, although not a large or impressive structure, has a dark history that no one wants to mention at night. People warn each other never to stop at this bridge when night falls because it is near an abandoned playground, which has witnessed countless accidents and mysterious deaths of children. The story of the bridge and the playground has existed through many generations. Locals say that at night, when the area becomes silent, you can hear laughter and calls echoing from the dark void. These sounds are not like those of nature or wild animals. They sound like the calls of lost children, echoing from the past, like an eerie reminder. But the scariest thing is the strange phenomena that happen when someone accidentally stops at the bridge at night. Many people have shared that when they parked by the bridge, their car suddenly started moving, even though the engine was off. It felt as if an invisible force was controlling the car, slowly pushing it forward, and it couldn't be explained. At first, people thought they were just imagining things, but then the car moved faster and faster, and they couldn't control it. When these drivers tried to turn off the engine, or even restart the car, the vehicle would become silent, with no sign of anything unusual. They couldn't understand what had happened, but the fear stayed with them. They left the place confused, unable to forget the cold feeling and the mysterious presence they sensed. Though the stories about the Shadow Creek Bridge are just rumors, they are increasingly shared, making this bridge more mysterious and frightening than ever. The cause of these strange events is unknown, but everyone who has ever stopped at the bridge at night cannot deny that something unexplainable lingers in the stillness of that space. The bridge still stands there, day after day, looking through the years, like a witness to unsolved mysteries, and perhaps it will always be an irresistible destination for those brave enough to face the invisible fear from the past. In Charleston, West Virginia, there is a creepy urban legend passed down through generations, and it is the story of the Old Betty. On Halloween night, as darkness falls, there is an important warning. Everyone must be home before 10 p.m., or they will become the target of a dangerous ghost. An ugly old woman with messy white hair and cold, piercing eyes. She holds a sharp knife, always ready to attack anyone who dares to ignore the warning and break the curfew. The story says that the Old Betty will suddenly appear, hiding in the shadows and luring passersby. If you don't notice her presence in time, you will be kidnapped and taken to an old grave where she buried herself decades ago. Deep in the Shadow Hills Cemetery, a desolate and eerie graveyard. Anyone caught in the cemetery on Halloween night will have only one choice: escape before sunrise, or you will become her breakfast. The Old Betty is an unforgiving spirit, and she never lets anyone escape her territory after curfew. Those who do not leave the cemetery before dawn will face a painful and terrifying end, dragged into a grave and never able to escape. Everyone knows this story, but no one dares to challenge it. The stories of people who went missing on Halloween night, those who never returned from Shadow Hills Cemetery, always send chills down people's spines. Families in the area remind each other as Halloween approaches. No one dares to go outside after 10 p.m., and no one dares to step beyond the city limits as the night begins to fall. No one wants to become the next victim in the Old Betty's deadly game, because once she chooses you, you will have no chance to escape. With each passing year, the story of the Old Betty becomes more terrifying, and on quiet Halloween nights, when everything seems to become mysterious, no one dares to step into the darkness after the clock strikes 10. One thing is certain: the Old Betty is still lurking somewhere, waiting for anyone who dares to challenge her legend. In Burlington, Vermont, there is a creepy story passed down through generations. The story of the lady in the white dresses castle. Long ago, there was a woman named Emily, a single mother who was pregnant without a husband. She gave birth to a beautiful daughter named Lily. The two of them lived in an old castle by Lake Champlain, where everything was peaceful and happy. Emily was a loving mother, always doing everything she could to protect her daughter from the attention of the men around them. She wanted to keep Lily safe, away from the outside world, and those days, their life passed in warmth and happiness. But one night, when Lily went for a walk around the lake, like she did on other evenings, the young girl suddenly disappeared. Despite all efforts to search, no one found any trace of Lily. Emily's beautiful daughter had vanished mysteriously, and from then on, her pain never faded. After Lily's disappearance, the people in the area began telling strange stories about the lady in the white dresses castle. They said that on late nights, anyone who dared to walk along the lakeshore would see a woman in a white nightgown walking slowly, her steps sinking into the darkness, her arms reaching out as if trying to retrieve something lost. It was Emily, the grieving mother, still searching for her daughter after all these years. Her cries, echoing in the dark night, always brought a sorrowful and desperate sound, as if the pain of losing her child could never be eased. People say that if anyone stands by the lakeshore at midnight, they will feel a chilling cold wind, and in the silent space, they will hear Emily calling her daughter's name. That call, carried on the wind, holds a hope that never fades, even though much time has passed. Many years have gone by, but the story of Emily and Lily still lives on in the conversations of the people in Burlington. Every night, when the surface of Lake Champlain reflects the soft moonlight, it is still said that one can hear the calls in the wind, the whispers of a mother who continues to search for her daughter. And the castle by the lake, where they once lived happily, still stands silently, witnessing the pain of a mother who will never stop grieving for her lost child. In Springfield, Illinois, there is a mysterious bridge that the locals call Cry Baby Bridge. Located outside the town, this bridge is surrounded by a dense, desolate, and quiet forest. Over time, the area has become almost uninhabited because it now belongs to a farm. However, the story of Cry Baby Bridge has been passed down through generations, becoming an essential part of the urban legends of this area. The legend says that on a dark and stormy night, a woman named Mary, in despair and sorrow, threw her little daughter, Emily, off the bridge. After this cruel act, Mary ended her own life, committing suicide in regret and pain. The story of their deaths became a dark mark on the bridge, and from then on, something strange began to happen. The heartbreaking cries of Emily, the lost little girl, started echoing in the quiet space around the bridge, especially on rainy nights. When the air is cold and a foggy mist covers the area, people can hear crying sounds coming from beneath the bridge, as if the child is still calling out for the mother who abandoned her. Those who pass over the bridge late at night often hear these sounds, as if the child's pain will never fade. But the scariest thing is, if you dare to stop your car in the middle of the bridge at midnight and look towards the edge of the forest, you will see a strange figure in the mist. It is a woman in a white dress, Mary, standing there, quietly staring at the bridge. Her figure is blurry, her cold smile appearing for a moment before disappearing into the darkness. Everything returns to silence, but a chilling and fearful feeling lingers with those who just witnessed the scene. Those who have seen Mary's figure cannot understand why she still haunts the bridge, as if she is searching for the daughter she lost forever. This story continues to be told, making Cry Baby Bridge a scary and mysterious place that no one dares approach after dark. The uneasy feeling still hangs in the air, as if the spirits of Emily and Mary are still searching for each other, never willing to let go.